And the next big fight is over clawbacks. That's when authorities go after returns taken out by those investors who profited on the Madoff scheme because they got out before the collapse. And in other words, it's the people who lost money, and they're going to go after the people who made money. Jeff Sonn is an attorney with Sonn Erez. He represents several Madoff victims. Richard Rafferty is a partner at the law firm Strasburger Price. He doesn't represent anyone involved in the case, but has extensive experience in these kinds of cases. Jeff, where do you want to start us out?
Well, I got to tell you, it's very important to understand that in every Ponzi scheme case, especially the Madoff case, you have winning victims, you have losing victims. The winning victims made profits. They took out more money than they put in. And then, frankly, they're going to have to give that money back because those profits they made are really the illegal gotten gains, money stolen from other investors that were paid to the winning investors.
Now, Jeff,
so this clawback is a...
Jeff, if I put in $1 million and then I took out $1 million, I didn't take out $2 million with profit. I just took out exactly what I put in. Am I still going to be subject to a clawback because I have to share the level of loss with everyone else?
Possibly, yes. And here's the distinction. Number one, if you gave reasonably equivalent value, put up $1 million and took out $1 million, that's reasonably equivalent value. That's one defense. The second thing is, however, if you knew or should have known of the fraud and you didn't act in good faith, you might have to give that $1 million back. For most of the victims, I think they're not going to have to give it back. But for many victims who made money or should have known better, they're going to have to give back the profits and maybe even some of their own investments.
All right, Richard, I guess suspect number one in the clawback will be the guys Jeffrey Pacauer and Stanley Chase. They withdrew $6.1 billion over and above their principal investment. They seem like they're sitting targets, right? They've already been sued by the trustee. Richard?
Right. The problem is you can always find somebody who, as Jeff has labeled, is on the winning side, who makes an easy target. But if you're trying to set rules to apply to all the investors on the winning side, and for people who might have pulled their money out a year, 2, 3 years ago, it's not as if they have that money sitting in a cookie jar that they can just return to the investors. As much as everybody wants the investors to be able to share in the money that's available, it could be a mistake to really view that money as being available. That money might have been spent on in fact, if it was received 2 or 3 years ago, I think there's an argument that the trustee can try and get money back that was received 6 years ago. I mean, that money might not just be around anymore. And so you sort of have, I think you have to deal with what people view as the rules of the marketplace. If you have money invested, you view that money at risk. As being at risk. If you take the money and your profits off the table, it's hard to think that you need to sort of keep that, set it aside for 6 years in case the way that you invested your money was
Dennis, let me tell you something. My law firm, I've represented an SEC receiver recently in a $350 million Ponzi scheme case, and we had to sue one of the victims who took out a couple of $1 million. Ultimately, we figured out that he profited by $604,000. Now, the receiver, Picard, will look at whether or not the victims still have the money, because clearly they're not going to chase people who have no money. But to say whether they spent it or not isn't really the issue. The issue is trying to equalize the pain and doing what's right. If customer B got dividends, let's say profits, more than they put in, then it's simply not fair to them to keep it. Now, whether they spent it, they're going to have to show their financial statements to Mr. Picauer. They're going to show where their assets went. The fact they may have spent some of it is not the issue. The issue is leveling the playing field. The winning victims are going to have to pay back the losing victims.
Okay, Jeff, Richard, thank you very much for being with us tonight, gentlemen.